Welcome viewers into Gridiron Eve, hosted by myself, John Vogel, and none other than the Mike Huesmann, who joins it. We are so excited because this marks the start of college football, right? Like, this is the beginning of the football season. Tomorrow, we're going to have live football for the first time, live college football for the first time since what, January? It's been January this year.
It has, yes. So over 8 months, very exciting. I feel like, with the way it is now with, transfer portal and we're seeing more transfers and things like that, college football is in the news more than it ever has been, and we're seeing it updated more. But nothing beats actually having games to look forward to and knowing they're coming tomorrow.
Exactly, man. And it's so exciting because this is the start of everything, right? Like week 0 is kind of that tune-up week. Kind of think of it as preseason, where
Yep.
we have a lot of different teams that they take the early advantage. Like Brett Bielema was on Big Ten Network today talking about the advantage that it has when you start with like a big when you start with this game and you go, the biggest jump in your players is from week 1 to week 2, and so you
Yep.
get an early jump in on week 1 when everybody else is just starting. It's a competitive advantage, and
And
so
I heard Jim Mora, now with UConn saying the same thing that they're excited, especially for a new staff, to get in a little earlier in fall camp and be able to have that evaluation process go just a little bit longer for that team. But then, like, I know we're going to touch on it, but you have, you said it has that preseason feel, but we do have conference games, which are very, very meaningful. So it's different, but you also can't take all of them lightly.
exactly, and that's the biggest thing too is conference games have started. Like the big one that we're going to get into, today, that'll be Nebraska Northwestern, which is it doesn't sound like it's a big game to a lot of people, but it really is. It's a huge game in terms of both of these programs are coming into the season and they want to establish what they want to do this year, and this
Yeah.
is the start for that. They're starting against each other. They both had very disappointing seasons last year. Nebraska's definitely got a coach on the hot seat.
Yeah,
And
in fact, for you with Sapient, I wrote an article a while back about coaches on the hot seat, and I firmly believe Scott Frost is number one on that list. He's gotten more rope than a lot of guys who would have already been fired at this point would have. Um, and I feel like if he doesn't pull off 8 wins and a bowl game, he's out the door. Now, they're going to have a pretty good squad this year, I think. I'm the last guy who's going to root for Nebraska and pull for them, but they do have some good things going for them. Casey Thompson will be one of the most impactful transfer portal QBs. Not saying he's the best, but in terms of impact on a team, he's going to be right up there near the top. And bringing in Mark Whipple as the offensive coordinator, who did wonders for Kenny Pickett at Pitt last year. Nebraska has a lot to be interested in and a lot to look forward to, but I get where the apprehension is going to be as well. And the flip side of that, with Pat Fitzgerald in Northwestern, you have a coach who also struggled last year, but one of the safest in America in his job. They could win 2 games the next 3 years. He probably still has his job. They love him there. He's probably not going anywhere, because if he did want to go somewhere else, that would have already happened by now.
exactly, and that's the biggest thing, right? Is he has a history of playing pretty well opening game, right?
Yep.
And so that's the thing is actually Mark Lawrence's playbook. I'm sure a lot of the viewers, if you don't know about that, that's a great resource if you want to get into some betting and stuff this year, which we're going to discuss a lot on the show. We're going to talk a lot about betting and different stuff like that. So he pointed out that they have never lost openers back to back in back to back seasons, right? So in the entire era under Pat Fitzgerald, and last year they lost their opener.
Yep.
And so it's kind of funny because when I'm looking at this matchup, one of the things that I've been looking at over the last couple of years, because there's this extra influx of talent left over from the COVID year, right? So because the COVID year kept all these players in college that are normally gone by now, you have loads of talent at all these different schools. And I think the biggest part of it or the most important part of assessing who you want to bet on during a week is going to be basically looking at the team and seeing who's going to win in the trenches. And so this whole report thing, I'm pretty sure you saw it. Pretty sure we were talking about it. Scott Frost talking about his offensive lineman puke several times per practice right now. That's because he knows his offensive line is absolute dog shit right now. It's so bad. And when you look at this Northwestern team, they've got a really good chance to dominate in the trenches. So I think that's the biggest part of this game coming up that we need to really take a look at is who's going to win in the trenches. And honestly, it's you got to wonder if that Nebraska offense is going to be able to function.
Yeah, and I think what Casey Thompson brings for his skill set might be the best friend to some of their O-line struggles, because he's going to be able to move outside the pocket. He probably won't hold on to the ball very quickly, and he can find plays quickly while improvising. And that is going to be huge, because they're not a team who's going to be able to let him drop back in the pocket for 5 seconds and find the guy downfield. It's not who they are. I think they know that. I have no doubts that Mark Whipple will call the right plays to help their team move the ball.
And he's going to have to. I mean, it is disastrous when you're looking at this offensive line and how they're going to match up with other Big Ten teams this year. That's why they're puking that many times in practice a day, because he knows they're in such horrible shape right now. But I do want to talk more about this game later on in the show after we've kind of gone through some of the NFL draft stuff when Damond Talbot will join the show around 9 p.m. Eastern time. So you mentioned Jim Mora in the opening, right? Who's now the head coach at UConn, who opens up against Utah State. That'll be at 4 p.m. Eastern on FS1. Utah State is favored by 26.5. And
that sounds about right. Yep.
It sounds about right, but I guess the first thing we need to touch on is the headline on ESPN right now, which is about Jim Mora talking about basically how he never should have been fired at UCLA and that his house is haunted and he's ready to undergo one of the sport's biggest reclamation projects. And I mean, that's a lot to digest, and
there's a lot going on with what he's saying. Yeah, there's a lot going on with more there. I don't know if you've seen it, but or our viewers have seen it. That 6-part series they're doing on UConn's preseason. I can't say I've tuned into every episode, but I at least have a decent idea of what's happening there. And he's a guy who you get the impression almost instantly that there is a high level of self-confidence there, which I always like to see in coaches who take over really poor programs. You need to eliminate the self-doubt and just have that concept of I am the guy that can bring them back. And few programs in the country need that more than UConn does. They are near the bottom. There are not many things they have going for them. And if he's the guy that can bring them back, more power to him. I don't know if anyone can, but it's a weird turn that he went from talking about his job in UConn to I shouldn't have been fired at UCLA. And I've said this with many people before. In a way, we underestimate UCLA and have for years. And they're one of those teams I feel like we let them skate by on mediocrity when everything else about them should lead to a top 15 program perennially.
Yeah.
They are in one of the biggest recruiting hotbeds in the country, at one of the most well-funded schools in the country, in a conference that is not ultra competitive. If that were anybody else, we would demand you are winning 9 or 10 games a year. And for whatever reason, with UCLA, that hasn't been the case. We've allowed them to skate by on just being a team like Minnesota or Pitt or Mississippi State, who, yeah, they're okay. They're going to bowl games. We don't seriously consider them to be a national title contender, though. And UCLA should be in that step up above where we are consistently talking about them, I think. And that's why I think it's okay that they got rid of Mora. If you're not taking a program like that to that next step up, I'm okay if they get rid of you and go after someone else. Texas has done it more times than we can count in recent years. And UCLA may have done it last year had Chip not put together a pretty good year. I feel like they weren't too far from making a change of their own again, but they had a pretty good year last year. And I expect they'll be pretty good this year, though they will not be a team we will be directly talking about until next week.
Well, the biggest thing I think about UCLA, right, is the fact that you have a team that is your rival that is in the same city as you. And that team is USC. And USC just went out and got, probably the hottest head coach in the entire college football, that entire space, right? Lincoln Riley is a rock star in college football. With the way that he's put out quarterbacks and the way that, and the way that his offenses have always put up huge numbers, the way that everything just seems to work when he's in charge of a team. And that's the thing is, you've got so many reasons to be great over there. But I thought that was really funny. It's just, it's the biggest shift. It's not even just the, shifting from talking about, I got a job at UConn and I shouldn't have been fired from UCLA, but then even throwing in like the little bit about, hey, and my house is haunted. Now you're sounding like a crazy person.
Yes.
This is coming from someone who believes in ghosts, right? It's just like, now you're jumping all over the place. And come on, man, just let's focus on the football. You've got a team this year. You got a couple of transfers, that you can kind of build some cornerstones on. They picked up that kid from Kentucky. I can't think of his name right now, but
then they got Taquan Roberson too, QB from Penn State, and Tyson Fomicon, QB from Clemson. So,
so there's pieces there, and I think that's a big thing. So to get into the Utah State game coming up, because Utah State surrendered a ton of talent last year.
I'm higher on them than most people, and I'll say why. A few weeks ago, and now we're over a month, but I was on the Locked On Longhorns to talk about their transfer portal, and Utah State was the only G5 program I mentioned in the position groups that were the most improved because of the transfer portal. Logan Bonner is a pretty good QB, and in the portal, they gained Brian Cobbs, a receiver from Maryland, and Xavier Williams, a receiver from Alabama. Those are two really good receivers for the G5 level, and I think the Aggies will be a really fun team to look out for this year. And Blake Anderson's a heck of a coach. He's done well at multiple places, and that's the sign of a guy that usually knows what he's doing.
Yeah, and that's a fair point too. But I was kind of looking at the fact that they did lose some talent last year.
A lot. And you're absolutely right about that. Yeah.
And a lot of it was to the transfer portal, if I'm remembering correctly. Yeah. There were a lot of guys that came out and went somewhere else.
Yeah.
But that's a lot to replace. And on the defensive side, you're missing a lot of pieces too. And so I feel like that's where UConn has a chance to put something together in this game, because the fact that they can score points on a defense that right now has surrendered, it's looking pretty bleak for them right now. And like you mentioned, they have the transfer quarterbacks that came in, so that there's some talent there that they can work with. And
they did lose both their cornerbacks to the transfer portal, though, like you mentioned. So defending the pass will be an interesting concept for them too.
Yeah, that's the biggest problem.
Yeah.
You know, so when I look at a 26.5 point spread, you know, week
Yeah.
0, opening week, yeah, UConn almost always plays these week 0 games. They almost always lose by big numbers, but you know, they don't have a guy like Jim Mora. As crazy as he's sounding right now, but they don't have a guy like Jim Mora that leads them. You know, and while I agree with you, it was a good move by UCLA to move on from him and to let him go. The thing is he's at a really, really small school right now, and that's a really good opportunity for him to, you know, go out there and just win 4 games this year. I don't think there's really any chance UConn pulls off an upset tomorrow straight up.
No.
But I think 26.5 is a very generous number.
Agree. Yeah.
I think UConn can cover that tomorrow because they're going to have a little bit of a better defense. I think they have the advantage on the defensive side. Utah State's going to still put up points, like you mentioned. Logan Bonner's been playing college football since, you know, the Bush administration. Yeah, I'm stealing your joke right there.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah,
and
we will be able to use that joke for a couple more years because of
we got to. This is year 7 for Logan Bonner.
Yeah, though I'm a Gamecock now, my home state, Minnesota, the Gophers, who I think might win the Big Ten West this year. I'm just going to throw this out there: 3 of their 5 O-linemen, both guards in the center, are in their 6th year of college football right now. So that tells you where we're at eligibility and year-wise, that 3 of your 5 guys are in your 6th year playing football.
Big game that I kind of want to get into a little bit, because I think we've established that it's a really smart bet tomorrow. If you want to take a risk and, you know, kind of get something good, that probably 26.5 is going to get covered by UConn. Wyoming is playing Illinois. And why is this a big game to me? Because when we get into NFL draft stuff later on in the show, I'm going to rant and rave about this Wyoming defensive tackle named Cole Godbout that I do want to see one-on-one in a fight with Thor Nystrom just because of the names. And it would be fun to watch, but I love this matchup because Wyoming is one of these schools that is consistently underrated. And granted, we were just talking about Utah State losing a lot of talent in the transfer portal. Well, so did Wyoming. They surrendered their all-conference running back. He goes to Arizona State. They surrendered an all-conference defensive end who goes to Lincoln Riley at USC and Solomon Byrd. So they surrendered some talent too.
A receiver, Texas, who's not hurt.
Yeah, and then the 3rd-round pick, Muma, going to Jacksonville, the linebacker who is All-American.
Yeah. I will say, for those of you out there who are college football fantasy players, I know I certainly am, while we're on the Wyoming topic, even though we are replacing Xavier Valade, I think Titus Swen is one of your best plays for tomorrow. I expect him to put up decent numbers against Illinois in the fantasy game. He brings a lot to the table, and they will have ample tight ends and H-backs in front of him paving the way. So Titus Swen, good play tomorrow.
Good point there too. That's a really great point. But now replacing Valade, like you said, isn't it's a task, but it's doable. I think it's replacing the defense that's going to be the other part for Wyoming.
Yeah.
So right now, Illinois is favored by 14 straight up. That's just 2 touchdowns right there. I would say that Illinois has a pretty good chance of covering. But what I do want to talk about is the fact that Illinois has some playmakers that we don't talk about enough. Isaiah Williams is a little slot receiver that converted over from quarterback, and he is electric. Last year when Illinois opened up against Nebraska week 0, if we all remember that wonderful game that went down, the biggest part of that defense I thought that day was CJ Hart, linebacker at Illinois, who tore his ACL, I believe, in the 2nd quarter and was done for the year. He's been transferred from North Carolina State. I think that's going to say a whole lot more than a lot of people also realize there too. So 14 might be underselling what Illinois has. That's not to mention the transfer quarterback too, which I'm sure you can talk about.
Yeah, Tommy DeVito was at Syracuse, and he did win the job over Artur Sitkowski, who himself had been at Rutgers, though he was at Illinois last year. And I'm not as confident in Illinois covering as you are, I will say, and that I definitely think they will win, but they're not a team that pulls away from you. They're going to let teams stick around. They will run the ball heavy, as some of you may remember from their game against Penn State last year, which went to umpteen overtimes. They're going to get 2 tight ends in the game. They're going to grind the clock out. That doesn't oftentimes lead to winning by 3 scores in a game. Now, I certainly think they can, but I'm not as confident as you are in that.
So I'm looking at it from, you have Chase Brown, who's playing that running back spot. He is one of the more underrated running backs in the country right now.
He's good.
From a fantasy standpoint and from a draft standpoint, just a general standpoint. People don't know about this guy. He's a little speed demon. And they have a little, lightning and thunder effect because they bring in this, he's a true sophomore, 240-pound running back. Can't think of his name right now.
For Illinois, you're saying?
Yes. Yeah, this is Illinois. They have this
Reggie Love is the guy you're thinking of.
Yeah, that's him. And so with the quarterback, Brett Bielema sounded really impressed with DeVito, especially the way he's taken steps forward, since coming in the spring, working spring practices, and going through that, and then coming in for the summer camp as well. So he's very confident in him with the offense. There's playmakers. And this running game, you're talking about it grinding and everything, but with everything that Wyoming surrendered, I have to wonder if that defense is going to be able to hold up against that kind of effect, because you can do a lot, just with those playmakers going back and forth with, Isaiah Williams out of the slot, and then those 2 running backs coming down on you, and Vito able to throw it over the top, once you commit to it. So I love the Wyoming kid. Don't get me wrong there. Cole Godbout is he's a beast. He averaged 5 tackles a game last year as a defensive tackle.
Wow.
When was the last time you heard that?
I did not realize that number was that high. Yeah.
12 games, 70 tackles is what he had last year, which is just insane.
Another guy I am high on in that game, Luke Ford, tight end from Illinois. He's a heck of a player.
Yeah, no, he's great too.
Yeah.
Transfer in from Georgia, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure honestly, he's one that he was there last year. I forget some of the guys that came in the year before, but yeah, I'm pretty sure that's it.
And Daniel Barker was the tight end 1 last year, and he transferred out to Michigan State because he was not going to hold back Luke Ford.
Correct. Yeah.
So Barker himself is not a terrible tight end either, especially for that system, but I'm sure he'll do great things at Michigan State.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. So maybe we should hold a tally every week, and we'll put the tally on the screen throughout the season where we disagree on something, and we can put a certain amount of points on that, right? And so let's say 5 points for Wyoming, Illinois. I think Illinois covers very easily, and I will go ahead and move that spread to 20. Because I'm confident enough that they'll get the 3 touchdowns ahead of Wyoming. So if you disagree with that, we'll put 5 points on it and just, talk about it next week.
I will put 5 points on that, and I'll also put 5 on Utah State covering.
Oh, okay. Okay. You think they'll cut? Okay. So we're on 10 points here right now.
I'm less confident about the Utah State one, but for the sake of contrarian here, let's do both games, because I do think they can. I am a fan of Utah State this year, so I'll go with them.
Not every game that's being played this week has a spread, and so I think we'll touch on the games briefly later on, but focusing on the games that do have a spread, because it's, there's a lot of these teams that are opening up against FCS opponents or Division II or whatever. So the next one that has a spread kicks at 7 p.m. Eastern. It's going to be Charlotte at Florida Atlantic, Conference USA matchup, and it's a decent. This was a decent game last year. This was very close. It went down to the end, and both teams are returning their starting quarterbacks. Both teams are returning a lot of starters. So you are the expert on pretty much anything transfer portal related, which is why when I thought up the concept for the show, I was like, I have to have Who's on here because there's no one who knows the transfer portal better than him. So tell me a little bit about these two teams, and if Florida Atlantic is favored by 7 right now, if that is something that you think they'll cover.
That I would probably say that they will cover if I had to bet on it. I like Florida Atlantic. They are an interesting team because everybody hated Willie Taggart when he was at Florida State. And rightfully so. He was terrible there. But he'd been quite good everywhere else. I mean, he had 2 bad years with the Seminoles. His career record is still not bad. He also has done a pretty good job at FAU. That's kind of a backwater. Lane Kiffin did a heck of a job there. Willie took over a pretty good situation, but he's done a good job there too. So I like the direction Willie has them going, to the point where he will most likely get another P5 job. It may not be this year, but at some point, the Willie Taggart Reclamation Project will bring him back to a bigger school. He's a good coach. And I'll be the first to say, when Florida State hired him, I didn't like the hire. I feel vindicated in that. But I like the hire when Florida Atlantic hired him, and he's done a good job. He is a good coach. I just think, you saw the bright lights of of what was then one of the marquee jobs in the country. And I think people forgotten how quickly what an elite job that was. And he just didn't do a good job there. But Willie's a good coach, and they've brought in some good guys in the portal. So, he was there before, but Nkosi Perry, former Miami QB, will be taking the snaps for the Owls. He's a good player. And then Jakeem Green, a guy who, a Gamecock like me, a D lineman, will be there. There are a lot of guys. Jordan Young, a receiver that was at Florida State, who I believe Willie had recruited there, is there now. Josh Moore, a safety at UCLA, who we've talked about many times. Dorian Hinton, an old lineman who's at Middle Tennessee. Like a lot of these teams that we will talk about, there's a multitude of transport guys. The running back who was at Nebraska, Marvin Scott, he's there as well. So that was another good signing for them. Carter Boatwright, tight end, who had been at Florida State. Didn't play much for the Seminoles, was a decently high recruit, though. Well, if we're just looking at stars and recruiting ratings, probably one of the higher guys on that roster. And then the name is escaping me, but they brought in an interior lineman from Tennessee as well, who should start immediately for them. So there's a lot of improvements on that roster. And I don't say that to denigrate the guys that were at Florida Atlantic last year and had a good season. But when you're bringing in guys from the programs we've listed, it should be improvements across the board and give you more depth at those schools.
So I guess the real question kind of comes down to who is the better quarterback, because you have Chris Reynolds, who is the quarterback at Charlotte, and he's been there for quite a while now. I believe this is his 4th year as their starter. And you have Nkosi Perry at Florida Atlantic, who, as you touched on, came in from Miami and was quarterback there with Mark Richt. Who has the ups? Like who's better in this point from a college standpoint? I guess
Thor Nystrom and I disagree on this fervently. I am in the Chris Reynolds camp. He is in the Nkosi Perry camp and has been for some years.
Is he still mad that I beat him to drafting Nkosi Perry?
I don't think so, but it's probably still a sore spot, to say the least.
because I swiped them from him last year too in the Big 12 conference, but
And in our best ball G5P5 one, I took Chris Reynolds as Clayton Tune and Chris Reynolds are my QBs for that league. So I like the things that UNC Charlotte are doing, and I think that they could be a decent, I don't want to say great team. They're not going to be great, but they at least are, I think, trajecting in the right way. And Will Healy seems to be doing a decent job. They were 5-7 last year. They'd won 7 games. His first year, the COVID year that was shortened, they were pretty poor. But if memory serves me, they rarely, if ever, had a full roster that season. So that year is kind of a mulligan for everybody, or at least the teams that did poorly. But I think that Will Healy's a pretty good coach who, it's interesting enough, he was the head coach before them at Austin P, an FCS team who we will touch on later as they play Western Kentucky tomorrow. But we'll learn a lot about UNC Charlotte in the first 3 weeks because Florida Atlantic is tomorrow, and then they also play Maryland in week 3, and a few weeks after that, they come here to Columbia to play the Gamecocks. So we'll know, after week 5, they might only have 1 win, but we'll know more about them and what to expect, I think, going into their conference schedule, which many of their tougher games they drew at home. I know they have UTEP, Western Kentucky, and I think Louisiana Tech all at home. And I think UTEP and WKU will both be 2 of the better teams they play. So,
I think I'm kind of leaning Florida Atlantic on this one.
Yeah.
And, it's just because from almost any aspect that you look at this, Florida Atlantic just has this. It might not be a big advantage, but it's a slight advantage, and that just adds up. And so I like where Florida Atlantic is, and there's some prospects too that are there that are pretty decent from an NFL draft standpoint that I like as well. So
I agree, and even though I said I'm Team Reynolds in that debate, I still like Florida Atlantic as the team, overall more in that game.
Oh yeah, North Texas will play UTEP. This is not going to be a game that's going to be televised nationally. I believe this is the local one, probably on Bally Sports or something like that.
Which is a shame because it's one of the most scenic stadiums in America playing at the Sun Bowl.
Yeah, and it'll be honestly, it'll probably be one of the closer games. This is our closest spread of the week. North Texas is favored by 1.5.
Okay,
and I might be crazy for saying this because I know UTEP lost a lot of people from last year.
They did. Yeah.
Jacob Cowing being the biggest one that they lost.
Yes.
Their star receiver, he was kind of like we're going to chuck up a prayer and he's going to come down with it type guy.
That's a great comparison there, an analogy of him.
I know they lost him, and I know that's bad, but I kind of like them getting the upset at home, and settling into this season because North Texas, I mean, what does North Texas really have?
The oldest starting QB in the FBS is what they have in Austinani.
Well,
he is turning 29 years old pretty soon.
So basically what you're telling me is we have a Brandon Whedon situation.
I was maybe going to be a little more friendly and say Chris Wenke, but that might have been pushing it too far and going back too long for our viewers. Yeah. But I actually am with you on the UTEP. I like UTEP. Dana Dimmel as a head coach, from talking to people in the industry, his career record isn't very good. He's also taken some pretty poor jobs. He is highly respected by the other people in his field. And if you look at UTEP last year, their breakdown, they there was a certain threshold where I forget if it was like teams ranked 91, 101, something like that. But every team below that, they absolutely dominated. Every team better than them, they lost to. So we almost know precisely if they will win or lose a game based on where that team is ranked, which usually is an indicator that you are well coached because you're beating everybody you're supposed to beat. And I'd probably say North Texas at home is a team they should beat. So I am with the Miners tomorrow, as you are. Gavin Hardison is an unremarkable QB, but he's played a lot of games. And in a game like that, that might count for something.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that is kind of going under the radar here, I'm pulling up my little note here, is they have a couple guys in the trenches that are really good.
They do
at UTEP.
Yeah.
And the first guy that I'm going to mention is he's like a rush edge, like a 3-4 defensive end. Think, TJ Watt, that kind of player, is Praise Amaywell, I think is how you say his name. I may be slaughtering that. Amaywell is a beast, first of all. And he made my all underrated team this year. You can go check that out at NFLDraftBlitz.com, or just right there on my Twitter feed is right there. They have some offensive linemen too that are really good. Jeremiah Byers is an NFL prospect. Elijah Klein is potentially an NFL prospect, but really the guy that the NFL is looking at is Bobby DeHaro. And that's another guard. So that's 3 offensive linemen that could go play professional football at some level. And when you look at North Texas, they just don't have that kind of roster. And it's not even just, that they have the offensive line. It's the defense too. It's not just Praise. It's, Keenan Stewart is a really good, solid defensive tackle on the interior. And so I think it's going to be a grind game. You're not going to see a lot of scoring. I don't know what the over-under is because I don't have that pulled up. Let me see if I can't get that pulled up right now. Because
while you're pulling it up, I will say, while you're talking about UTEP's defense, I will say when I was a grad assistant at Northwestern State, FCS, my second year, our head coach was Bradley Dale Pivito, who is now UTEP's D coordinator.
So connections.
He'd been at with Jimbo as linebackers at A&M for a while, and now he's D coordinator at UTEP with Dimmel, who he had coached with Dimmel when Dimmel was at Houston years ago as well. So those two.
The over-under on that is 54.5. I would probably go under on that, personally. I think under, and UTEP with the upset is a really good bet tomorrow.
That's an interesting one. I like over under wise. Because that's a low over under, and it's not going to take much to get. I don't know if I feel comfortable taking the under in that one, to be honest.
I like the under. I think this is going to be like one of these 17-13 games, and it's going to be. It's not going to be 2 field goals. It's going to be somebody's going to miss an extra point, and it's going to be a little bit crazy like that. But because when you look at these teams, so I think the playmakers, North Texas has the advantage. They got Jeremy Macklin's little brothers over there now as the wide receiver.
Roderick Burns, Tommy Bush of Georgia transfers at receiver. He's a mountain of a guy. Then at running back, you have Oscar Attaway is a decent guy.
And UTEP has guys too, like Gavin Hardison, a quarterback, and
Tyron Smith.
Yep, there's a couple running backs that they have too.
They have 2 of them that are for this week. They're ranked decently high on the fantasy projections. Attaway's higher than both of them, but it struck me that you would have 2 guys from one team relatively high. Ronald Awatz is one of them, and I'm blanking on Hankins. Deion Hankins is the other one.
Yep. And that's the thing, is I think the advantage in playmakers is North Texas, and that's probably why they're favored in this. But the advantage on both sides of the ball in the trenches is UTEP. Yep. And that's what kind of tells me, it's week 0. Teams are going to be figuring themselves out. And if you have a team with all the playmakers that are, they don't have the interior, they don't have the line, the trenches to win that aspect of the game, I think that there's going to be a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
That's going to lead to a lack of scoring. It's going to be a very tight, close game. And I'd be surprised, honestly, if this game goes over 40 points. That might be a little bit bold to say, but that's why I'm very comfortable taking the under.
I do think everything you just said is absolutely true, and even a way to simplify that might be whoever runs the ball better is going to win.
Yeah,
and I think that'll be UTEP because their O-line is better and they have more depth at running back. And depth in these early season August games can mean more than depth in November because of conditioning.
Exactly. That's the big thing. So we got 2 games left to get through.
Okay.
In terms of that have lines. And so 10 o'clock tomorrow night on ESPN2 Eastern, we have Nevada going on the road to play New Mexico State. They are favored by just 8.5. And Nevada lost a lot of talent last year. Like you want to talk about a transfer portal exodus? That's what happened at Nevada.
Yeah, and they all follow the old coach to Colorado State.
Exactly. And so it was everybody got out of Nevada except for a very few guys. Actually, there's a running back over there that I like.
Tawa. Yeah.
Tawa. Yeah. That's him. I knew I was going to slaughter his name.
For the for those of you who are fantasy players, the CFF site is the way to go. The guys over there, Mike and Joe, do a great job, but they have Tawa as the top running back tomorrow for all the games.
Oh yeah, I think that there's a really good chance because
everybody's fairly logjam point wise. He, I think, is over 2 points over the next guy, who I believe is Dedrick Parson from Hawaii. I think is number 2.
Now the biggest thing to point out about this is New Mexico State has a couple linebackers that are pretty decent. One's been in college football just as long as some of these guys we've been talking about.
Absolutely.
Brohart, I believe his name is actually. I have to pull this stuff up too because Trevor Brohart, New Mexico State. He's really decent. They've got Chris Ajo as well. I think is how you say his name. It's actually a really interesting team because there's not a lot on the offensive side. In fact, the guy that I really liked there last year, the running back that I took in the fantasy league last year, he ended up transferring to Syracuse, and he'll be backing up Sean Tucker this year. Price was his name. But that's the thing is when you look at this, Nevada lost so much talent, and New Mexico State is traditionally one of these UConn level type UMass level schools
very much
that just get steamrolled, and you're looking at this going 8.5. That's it. That's all Nevada's favored by, but that's because Nevada. What does Nevada have? Like what are they gonna? Who are they playing?
So much, yeah. While we're on the New Mexico State thing, we should note for some people, Jerry Kill is the new head coach there, former Northern Illinois and Minnesota head coach. So big changes down there. And one of the more impactful transfers tomorrow could be Amonte Watkins. He was a running back who was at TCU that transferred to New Mexico State, kind of got lost in the shuffle of everybody just focused on where Zach Evans was going to go. But Watkins is a decent player, and he should be a decent player for New Mexico State and have that starting job.
Yeah, and I think that there's a lot of really decent teams here. I mean, decent players here, but I think Nevada covers this one relatively easily.
100%.
I think you could probably even get in if you can get an alt line up to around 15. Yeah. I'd probably be okay doing that. Maybe 13. I might stop at 13 just in case. But I don't think it's going to be 8.5 points here. I think it's going to be a lot more than that.
Yeah. I'm very curious to see how the post Jay Norvell world is for Nevada, because you talked about they lost everybody. They brought in Ken Wilson as new head coach. He, the last couple of years, was at Oregon, coaching on the defensive side of the ball. But before that, had been an assistant at Nevada for probably the better part of the last 20 years. He'd been there a really long time as an assistant. And he knows the place. They have some good things going for them, but there's a few things I think that stand out. If you have a guy like Jay Norvell, who's an up-and-coming name in the business, if you're leaving for another conference team, that tells me you have deficiencies at your program. Whether Nevada wasn't, maybe he just had a spat with an administrator, but I would guess there would be a lack of resources, lack of funding, lack of support in some way that made him leave, which is a condemnation of Nevada, and I think will limit how high you can grow and how much better you can get. So I'm curious to see how Wilson can pick up the pieces. And not that they weren't broken per se, but when you're replacing that many guys, you are picking up the pieces because there is not a lot of continuity there. They are, I think, a team, and I don't know if Wilson will do this or not, but they will need to embrace the new college football, and that is the transfer portal. He is going to need to do a good job of looking at those other teams out west, those Pac-12 teams, Utah, Cal, Washington, Wazoo, everybody in that conference. He's going to need to know who the 3- and 4-star recruits are on those teams that are not playing, because evaluating those guys and getting them to Nevada with 2 or 3 years of eligibility could be the difference in him succeeding and him not succeeding. So
and this is a fair point. Yep.
Yeah.
This is a good point because that is the new college football, is the transfer portal. Yeah. There's absolutely no doubt about that.
I will say I think they hit the nail on the head with their starting QB. Again, in the very first article I wrote for you for Sapient, transfer portal QBs, Shane Illingworth was one of the best available I mentioned. He did end up at Nevada and will be starting that game for the Wolfpack. The man formerly at Oklahoma State, who is
the backup. Yep. He came in. He started 3 games, I want to say, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And he is an absolute mountain of a man with a cannon for an arm. So, very much in the mold of Carson Strong in some ways.
Right. And Spencer Sanders had missed a few games, and he had to step in. I do remember that. So it's interesting that you do bring him up. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah.
So the last game that has a line that's coming up is going to be Vanderbilt going on the road at 10:30 Eastern to Hawaii. And they are favored by 9.5 for this game. And I think it's kind of says a lot, first off, about what Vegas really thinks about Vanderbilt entering year 2 with Clark Lay as a head coach. And it's going to be, first off, it's a big game for Vanderbilt because this is a chance to establish, hey, we can start taking care of business outside of the conference again, because they have not done that, in the last few years, the Derek Mason era, and then last year as, Clark tries to figure all this stuff out.
Yeah. Realistically, it is, if you look at their schedule, it's probably one of 3 winnable games they have on the schedule. There's maybe a 4th, but there are not many. And that's just the realistic.
Are we going to say? Or we could say Missouri's winnable?
I would not say any conference game is winnable for them at this point.
I know how you feel about Missouri, so I just had to kind of throw that out there.
Yeah, I have jumped on the Nystrom bandwagon in my feelings for Mizzou, but that's not to say I don't have a lot of respect for Eli Drinkwitz as a head coach. I think he's a pretty good one.
Yeah, no, he is.
Yeah.
He's done a good job with what he's had out there, which has not been consistent, not been a lot.
Yeah.
So
to Vandy, though, they I think we learn a lot about Clark Lee as a head coach this year.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's the biggest thing about this game. So it is a little bit of a challenge because that's 9:30 Eastern. That's 9:30 local time for Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
When they're going to be kicking. So the central time that they're used to playing in, they're used to practicing in. You're kicking a game at 9:30, and you're going to be playing it probably well till 1 a.m. your local time, which is very, very late, especially when you consider, that your typical routine gets you up kind of earlier in the morning, so, fatigue is kind of going to be a factor here, I think, for Vanderbilt. And I know you can sit there, you could simulate it, and you say, hey, for the next 2 weeks, we're doing late practices and everything, or whatever that they did. I don't know if that's what they did. I haven't heard, but it's going to be a major thing. And I think if Vanderbilt can jump to a big enough lead, which I don't have a lot of confidence in them doing, if they can jump to a big enough lead in the early parts of the game, they've got a really good chance to cover the 9.5 point spread.
Yeah. One thing, we've talked a little bit about the conditions and fatigue. You can't simulate that jungle climate you're going to get in Hawaii and Nashville. So that that could be a factor. I mean,
especially the last few weeks, because normally August is such a hot month. It's normally burning up here because I live south of Nashville, so I'm experiencing the climate that they have. But normally August it's burning hot, 95, 100 degrees, and not this year. It's been like 85. I think it's the hottest it's been the last 2 weeks. So you're not going to simulate Hawaii. No. There's no way you were able to simulate Hawaii.
Vandy's best friend in that game is going to be, like you talked about, if they can jump to an early lead, then if you can feed Raymond Davis the ball in the second half, that's going to be your path to. I was going to say covering. I was thinking about what you told 9.5. You said that was the spread.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough spread for them, especially because Hawaii has a few playmakers of their own on the offensive side that can just bust a game wide open.
They also, Hawaii, another team, coach went to the coaching carousel this season. They brought in Timmy Chang, former star QB of theirs.
Yeah, so 2005 Bowman rookie card I have.
Oh, nice.
Arizona Cardinals. Okay. And you look at the back and he threw for like 4,700 yards. And we were thinking little John Vogel thought that this was one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever grace the planet Earth.
Devon Bess, Ryan Grace Mullins, they had their receivers put up great numbers there. They've also gotten some good transfers too at Hawaii. Devin King, a D-back from Maryland, is there now. They got Joey Yellen, a QB who was at Pitt. And I believe they also got Cameron Cooper, a QB who was at Washington State. Mm-hmm. The other one we were talking about, I've mentioned, hold on, I had it drawn up. We were talking about, I mentioned Utah recently, and Luke Felix Fualo, an O-lineman who was at Utah, has transferred to Hawaii, and he should start for him right on the O-line, and he'll be a good addition there.
Yeah, that sounds about right. And so, actually, that could not have been more perfect timing. So we're going to go ahead and switch our focus now that we've gone through all the game lines and everything to the NFL draft. Specifically, upcoming is the Hula Bowl. And this entire NFL draft process, the Hula Bowl sponsors us. So thanks to the Hula Bowl, thanks to NFL Draft Diamonds. But Mr. Damond Talbot himself is joining the stream. And let's get this situated so that you're not blocked out there. Get you up on the big one. There we go. Dang it. I might have to play around with this. Hang on, I'm still figuring this out. So bear with me as we go through all this. So,
no, you're fine.
Welcome to the show, Mr. Talbot. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. How are you guys?
We're doing well. Glad to meet you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I wanted to get you on here because the Hula Bowl last year really took a step forward, I think, in terms of its status as an all-star game in the offseason. So can you talk to us a little bit about what kind of momentum you're trying to build on this year as you go forward?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, when you look at the game, it was an awesome opportunity for us to be able to go out and perform the way that we did this past year. We have an awesome staff, the scouting staff. We have, our draft guy Jimmy's he's my go-to, and then we had Scott Phillips. We ended up bringing on 18 scouts throughout the country that we had found through different scouting schools. One specifically was Dax Nullenberg's, elite scout school. And, we found these guys, put them to work, and they went out and did the hard work. They went out, found the guys that we needed to get, and we put together a heck of a roster. We ended up with 104 of 114 players getting an opportunity at the next level, at least an opportunity, whether that be a practice squad opportunity or not even a regular practice squad, just an opportunity to work out. You know what I mean? They had that opportunity. So it was a huge blessing there. We had 180 scouts total. We had 151 NFL scouts. And, it just, obviously when you have the talent there, the scouts will come. It doesn't matter what it is. And our staff put together an amazing roster where 8 of our guys were drafted. We doubled our amount the year before. And it was our first year working with the Hula Bowl, and we were excited to do it. So I think this year we have bigger goals, obviously. I'm a go-getter. I believe in trying to do the best. I would love to be the Senior Bowl. I know they're, obviously they have good people running their event. Same with all the other games, the NFLPA and the East West. But, obviously it's a competition, man. And I love competition. I think it's the healthiest thing in the world. And, if we all compete and we all get better, that's just better opportunities for players. And that's what I'm trying to do.
Now, one of the things that happened last year, because I was following it very closely and I got to know some of the guys that you brought on the scouting thing, which is great, was you guys almost had to replace your roster completely. Because you guys would announce that, hey, so-and-so's coming to the Hula Bowl, and then they would get another offer to another game. So is that something that you're kind of adjusting to this year, or are you going out straight out again? You'll replace this entire roster again?
When it comes to scouting, if you're confident in what you do and you have a good team, it doesn't matter. There's players out there left and right, that guys that were on our, are kind of not, I'm not going to say replacement, but replacement rosters. We had them built out. So we're going to try to get the best players. We've lost a lot. We lost 47 players 3 weeks before the game. And it hurt. It hurt. It stung a little bit, but that's what scouting is. You have to adjust. And I'm excited. I'm excited to, do it again and see. Maybe this year I'll keep it with all the success. Maybe I'll get to keep my guys. Who knows? Yeah.
And so you guys just recently released your big giant list that you always release every year of all the the lower level school prospects. And a lot of them you have interviews with on the website, which, I utilize quite often, if I'm being honest. And I think a lot of people, that scout the draft, very heavily use it as well. But is that sort of like a build it list where you start to kind of figure out who you want to try to bring into the Hula Bowl? Or is that not so much a factor in your process?
No, I think, obviously we're the small school people. Everybody wants to know who the best small schoolers are. Our staff does a great job at finding these guys and putting it out. And this list that's released online is, to be honest with you, is being released for NFL teams. We've always provided our list to NFL clubs, to anybody that wants it, whether it be an area scout or a GM. We've given these lists out for many, many years. We put the best players on there. That way, when these guys go into that school, they know, hey, look, we have these guys available. Am I missing anybody? Well, let me go check out the Draft Diamonds rankings. We keep it right there on the front page. It's been something that's been utilized by many GMs. It's built a huge relationship for me with a lot of personnel. And, obviously, does it mean that person, just because they make that list, is going to get an opportunity? No, there's 2,000 players, 800 players, however many there are by the time the end of the year comes. And that's just small schoolers. We have our big board list, which is FBS players. It's another, God, who knows? I mean, another 2,700 players. So there's a lot of there's a lot of players that we have, and we just keep working to try to find out who's the best at the time to bring them in.
One thing I always like about the small school list, being a Minnesota Midwestern guy who also likes FCS D2 a lot, it's always fun for me to look at what Missouri Valley guys you have on that list. And there's usually a lot of guys from that conference on there. It's probably the best FCS conference there is, but seeing a lot of those guys that I've seen play for a number of years, there's always a lot of Minnesota, North Dakota, some South Dakota, Wisconsin guys on those rosters that you have on that small school list. So it's fun to see those guys and how they've progressed since they've been at those schools.
Yeah, when you look at those them coaching staffs in that division, I mean, just there's so many amazing people that I mean, all the way through. I mean, North Dakota State's amazing. South Dakota State, South Dakota. I mean, you have even in the D2s in Minnesota.
Yeah,
where you go to Duluth and little schools, Mankato. I mean, they're stacked. Wisconsin Whitewater.
Yeah. So where I'm from is kind of a triangle, but like my hometown's Brainerd, and then Bemidji and Duluth. And Bemidji State, I know there was 3 or 4 guys from Bemidji State on that list. They had a heck of a run last year. And then Minnesota State and Moorhead's all right. UMD's always really good. I know Zach Ojale, a fullback, was on that list from them, and he was an option quarterback in high school. And his twin brother's an O-lineman on the team with them. So
get that. That was a heck of a twin setting right there. But hey, he's a good ball player too. He really is.
So, is there anything specific that you have in the plans coming up for the Hula Bowl this year?
Yeah, I mean, we're going for the home run. I'm trying to hit a gusto. So, I don't know if you guys have seen it. We released our Hula Bowl Hall of Fame list. It's going to be coming out. The Hula Bowl has been around since 1946. It's probably one of the richest historied games ever in Senior Bowl history or in All-Star game history, we'll say. When you have guys like Tom Brady and Joe Montana and Dan Marino that have all played in your game, the Drew Breeses, and I mean, your list goes on and on. We made an all-time roster this year, and the names on it are just insane. Like, I didn't even think that many people played in the Hula Bowl, but the game is there, the history's there. But like this year, to be able to bring back Brandon Marshall to UCF, to induct him into the Hall of Fame, along with Reggie White. I mean, he's passed, but just to have Reggie White's family, I've talked to his wife, Sarah, last week. She's going to be there with her son. And, to be able to come and represent Bobby Bowden and Ron Simmons, we have Willie Rofe getting accepted in, Daryl Talley. I mean, the Hall of Fame class is amazing. The Hula Bowl is not just a football game. The Hula Bowl is a week of events. Yeah. So just in case you guys didn't know, the Hula Bowls starts on a Sunday because that's when, not the players come in, but the coaches come in. And then coaches come in. We do a coach symposium for all the coaches in the local area. So our coaches are Mike Smith and Brian Billett coming back this year again with their coaching staff. So they'll be back doing a coaches symposium on that Sunday. The players come in on that Monday. We have on Wednesday, we do our normal practices all the way up till Thursday. Thursday's the Hall of Fame dinner. The Hall of Fame dinner, we induct all our guys into the Hall of Fame. These guys get to meet them. We have a Joe Roth Award ceremony. We have a Trailblazer Award who's going to Alejandro Villanueva this year. Former Pittsburgh Steeler, Baltimore Raven, and Army Ranger, to be able to do 3 tours overseas and then come over here and then play in the league and become a Pro Bowler is an impressive stat. And then, we go into Friday, we have a celebrity golf tournament. We have guys like Rob Riggle and Chris Chelios, Johnny Damon, big time players coming in to play golf with the people in the surrounding area and business members. And to be able to do that and then to follow it into the game week at UCF. UCF's been awesome, and we're excited. I want to pack that house. They call it the bounce house for a reason. We need to pack that thing, and I want to feel it when it's bouncing. So I felt it when the UCF – go ahead.
would say some of those coaches are just massive names too. Like you had mentioned, Billick and Smith, but Kevin Sumlin, Carnell Lake. Wasn't Wade Phillips there last year? Was one of them?
Yeah, Wade Phillips.
Ron Turner, old Illinois head coach. Yeah.
Yeah, and we're looking to do the same thing, bring them back. A couple of them obviously took jobs with other leagues. Wade Phillips got an XFL job. Sumlin went to the USFL with the Gamblers. So these guys got opportunities. It's crazy. The opportunities that came out of the Hula Bowl for last year, just not even for our coaching staff, but for our staff itself. Out of the 18 people that we brought on as scouts, 17 of them got a job. 17 of them took jobs elsewhere. That's with the NFL. We had our director of ops took a job with the Titans. Our analytic guy took a job with the Cardinals. You know, we had one of our coaches actually take a job. One of the guys that we brought in as an intern that scouted, he actually took a job in the USFL as a linebackers coach. I mean, our assistant director took a job at Toledo as a coaching staff. And I mean, we've had directors of player personnel come out. A lot of scouts get opportunities. We had a couple guys work with Blesto. So it was a good opportunity, not just for players, but for everybody involved. And this year we're doing the same thing. We went out and got a whole new group of people. We still have some of the guys coming back that are helping with us, and we're going to do it again. Hopefully we get everybody an opportunity. We've got some pretty cool things in the pipeline, and hopefully you'll hear about them soon. But, you know, I can't talk about them right now. I'm still kind of – can't break it on your show yet.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, the Hula Bowl was one of the more underrated events last year. You know, I don't think enough people talked about it. And then also to get, you know, the CBS Sports deal that you guys got has to be huge too, because I know that for a fact there were a lot of people that were tuning in because our website, we were tracking all the rosters for all the different games, and we had ridiculous traffic that day, which means people were watching it, you know, and so there is an intrigue to this game. And you guys put out talent too. I mean, look at Alec Ogletree. Alec Ogletree's been a star in the preseason with the Indianapolis Colts, and nobody really knew who he was, you know, outside of NFL circles until he showed up to the Hula Bowl and caught a touchdown. I went, who the hell is this guy?
Yeah, he actually shined. He was a big kid from Youngstown State. He played at Findlay before. We actually watched him at Findlay and fell in love with him. And you know, he was a guy that he came to the Hula Bowl. He actually had the CGS invite as well, but he came to the Hula Bowl, and, you know, him coming out, and I mean, just he looks the part too, 6'5", 250. He's big, massive, physical, had a great week, amazing week throughout the entire week. If you're watching football, preseason football, Raheem Blackshear just absolutely is tearing it up in the preseason for the Bills. That kid, he had an awesome week. I mean, there was a lot of guys that really shined. But I think you're going to see it. I mean, over time, you're going to have more and more players. The great thing about scouting is they don't have to be draft picks. They have to make a 53-man roster. And that's what our goal is. Our goal is to make sure that we get as many guys as we can that stick. And if we can keep getting them to stick, then the Hula Bowl name and legacy will continue. And that's what we need to do.
Yeah, and that is the thing. And I loved Raheem Blackshear. You know, right when I saw you guys had jumped on him and invited him, and nobody else was, I was like, that is a mistake. This guy, he's a stud, and he's been great with the Buffalo Bills. But
the play I remember that stood out to me was when Terrell Harris caught the long touchdown. I remember that one.
Yeah, and he recently got released, and, you know, it's sad. He's a great football player. I think he'll probably latch on. I wouldn't be surprised if XFL, USFL is already all over him. I know CFL, I know the Toronto Argonauts own his rights, so if he does want to go to the CFL, he could go up there. So, I mean, he's a great football player, great kid, human being. I mean, I hope we wish him the best, but, you know, we'll see where it goes. I mean, he definitely has the talent. He was with the Browns for a little bit and then got released because they needed an offensive lineman when all their ACL injury centers started to happen. So, yeah.
He also, with his skill set, I could see him being a practice squad guy too, because he has that niche where he could fill a lot of those roles that they might need to mimic for guys on other teams.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm telling you, he's a great dude. A little small, but man, he's a competitor. And it was great because him and Mike Harley were so damn competitive that they were jumping up and like trying to compete with each other and trying to jump the other guys to get routes. And they ended up both going to the Browns. So it was pretty cool to see.
So I guess the last question that I have for you is, when you're going into this season, what does that process look like, for you, for the scouts, and maybe just what is it like putting together an all-star game?
Whew, it's hectic. There's more than just football involved. I do a lot with sponsorships and do a lot with reaching out to local people, trying to get the word out. Because I'm actually from Central Florida, so to be here is awesome. You know what I mean? I'm at home. I'm not leaving. I don't have to leave home too far anyway. I got to drive about 35 minutes. So to be here, to be able to put everything together, it's fun. It's exciting. It's a lot of work. Like you said, players start getting poached, and it's hard. It's really hard because you got to try to plan it accordingly. You want to have so many people from so many different areas. Like, you want to make sure that there's Floridians in the game. You want to make sure that there's some Florida players, because obviously you want to put butts in seats. And, there's a lot of different aspects of it. You gotta just have fun with it too, and not stress about it too much. Because if you do, it'll kill you, man. I promise you. I don't really stress too much. I just kind of like have fun. And I know, me, I'm a big believer in the Lord, and I know it always works out for me. So it's awesome. It's great to be able to do this. I've done this for many years. This is my second year coming back with the Hula Bowl, but I've been in the All-Star game. I was the first real draftnik person in the All-Star game circuit. I worked with the East-West Shrine game for 5 years, back with Jimmy Garoppolo and Josh Norman and all them. And when they were coming, I was the small school guy. So, I did bring a former East-West guy with me to the Hula Bowl. So he's with me on the West Coast, and I'm able to get Luis Ojeda back with me. He was a guy that I worked with back in the day, so I'm happy to have him covering the West Coast for me again. But we're just having fun, man. That's all we're going to do. And hopefully it'll keep staying that way.
Wonderful stuff, man. And just like, we're really looking forward to the game. I couldn't make it last year as I was coming back from the deployment and sat around in Kuwait for a long time. So that was awesome. But I'm definitely planning on trying to get down there this year, because I heard I wanted to be there last year. I couldn't. I wanted to. It sounds like it's an awesome week. And I knew everybody that I knew that was down there had a great week too. And obviously this game, like you said, it's gotten better. It got better from 2021 to 2022. It's only going to take steps up from 2022 to 2023. And we're here for it, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And man, look, man, you come down. We'll make sure you get access to everything. You guys can run Gridiron Eve from right there if you want to. And let's do it, man. I mean, look, it's pretty laid back. The Hula Bowl's kickback event. And I think you guys would enjoy it. Orlando's the best place to be. Where would you rather be? And I appreciate you for your
very
service,
few
man.
places. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, but I appreciate you for your service, man. It's pretty amazing. You know what I mean? Thank you for doing what you do. Without you, man, I wouldn't even be able to do this fun and adventurous job. So I appreciate you.
Appreciate you too, man. Thank you for joining the show. And for the future, over the season, we'll have Damond back in different episodes, kind of giving us a little bit of an update. Maybe we'll poke his brain about it, some different guys, and see what he thinks. Because there's going to be guys that pop up all year, and it's going to be a lot of fun to talk about. So thanks a lot, Mr. Talbot.
Absolutely.
For your time and for all of what you do.
Yeah, thank you guys, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Glad to have you. Glad to meet you. It's nice to have you.
Yes, sir.
And so there's a lot that goes into making an all-star game. And,
oh yeah.
I think it's fun because it was such a great event last year, with the way that they handle it. And then you look at, I use Draft Diamonds a lot because they have a lot of, obscure prospects that you can't really find info on. They got them there. And so I like that aspect of it. But
the small school list is one of the biggest resources I take from them. That's always very helpful.
Oh yeah. And I have it pulled up on the computer back at home right now. Like, it's just
nice.
It's ready to go because I use it all the time. So wrapping back around to the beginning is because we didn't touch a lot on the big game, and I wanted to save it for the end, because that is the big game this week is Nebraska is playing Northwestern. Now, what we had kind of touched on a little bit before we had moved on to other games and stuff was the fact that you have the trenches are going to probably be dominated by Northwestern in this game, and pointing out the fact that that Scott Frost is running his offensive line into the ground right now because they're not that good, and so he's trying to whip them into shape basically. I think that's huge. It says a lot about where he thinks that their offensive line is and how important it is that they get this back together. When you look at the Northwestern side, they have a lot of people think he's a tackle. I think he's a guard, but they have one of the top offensive linemen in the country right now in Peter Skronsky.
Yeah, he's good.
I think he's playing tackle, and so I don't think that that's ideal for him. I think he's much better as a guard, but they need a left tackle, and he can do it, so he does it. But real quick, before we really start getting into this again, we ran a poll on Nebraska and Northwestern, who's winning on Saturday on the Gridiron Eve account at Gridiron Eve. And as of now, we have 278 votes on the poll. 73% of you all are saying that Nebraska will win, while 27% of you are saying Northwestern. And that was a lot closer before Husker Wave and some other Husker accounts started retweeting it around.
They are one of those fan bases that they come at you in droves at times.
Yeah,
and they're overwhelming. Oklahoma and Tennessee do it as well, I've noticed. And it's just one of those things where something like that's going to greatly skew the results.
And that's what happened here was definitely got skewed a little bit. But before those accounts got to it, it was about 150 votes, and it was very close. It was like 55% were saying Nebraska, 45% were saying Northwestern.
Okay.
And so I think America thinks that this is going to be a really close game. And because of that, what I'm saying is I think that, the trenches are the reason for that.
Yeah.
You can have playmakers on both sides of the ball. You can do all these great things and have all these great schemes together, but if you cannot protect your quarterback, and I think that's going to be the biggest issue with Casey Thompson tomorrow, is if you can't protect your quarterback, you're not going to make big plays.
That's true.
Because that's the thing. If you watch him specifically in games that Texas lost last year that he started in, what was the key component to every single one of those games? They all had something in common.
I'm guessing he either got sacked or turned the ball over.
No time to throw.
Okay.
No time to throw. And I think that's what we're looking at right now is he's not going to have any time to throw tomorrow. I mean, if those offensive linemen have anything left in the tank by the time they play tomorrow, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like it's gonna be crazy.
And that's a shame because they have a couple receivers that are pretty good. Trey Palmer and Marcus Washington are good players. I think Travis Vokalek is a decent tight end. They have some guys that are going to be able to do things with the ball if they can get it to them. But if we think about their O-line, Kevin Williams is like the only starter that I could name off the top of my head, and that's not good for a program of their stature.
There's like nobody on that offensive, like literally. So
yeah,
I look years in advance, right? Like my drafts, my draft study takes me into this, where I've got guys queued up for 2024. I've got guys queued up that won't be eligible till 2025. And, when you got the Phil Steele magazine sitting there and you got the highlighters and you're using the different colors so that I know I'm color coding. Okay, he'll be eligible in 2024. He'll be eligible in 2025. Keep an eye on him, blah, blah. There's nobody highlighted on that offensive line. Yeah. There's no one. It's just straight garbage right now. And I think that's the issue. But Nebraska... I'm so hesitant to be like, I think Nebraska loses tomorrow. I don't think they cover. I don't think they're going to cover 11 points.
No. Like everything would point us to Nebraska probably being the better team, except everything that these teams have done in the past would point the opposite direction, which is odd. Like,
Yeah,
but you look at the
game
roster,
management.
there aren't many areas in that roster where Northwestern's better, but they're a team who plays well in the trenches, usually doesn't turn the ball over, and they're not going to make a lot of mistakes otherwise. And especially in these early season games, that can be the difference sometimes.
Yeah, I think you hit the hammer on the nail with that one, and I think that's going to be the big thing. Ryan Helinski, I think, is supposed to start tomorrow for Northwestern.
Yes, he will be starting. That is
South Carolina, great, right there. That was, I remember his first game. I remember
great might be a stretch, but he was better than Luke Doty after Jake Bentley broke his foot. So yeah,
no, he was a lot better. Yeah, it was much more pleasurable to watch Helinski than Doty. That's for damn sure.
It was. Helinski did start a game where we beat the Georgia Bulldogs on the road, and that was quite a feat.
Which is interesting because Bentley did that too as a freshman.
Yes.
Because I remember because Bentley was the guy that should have been like going to prom for that game.
Yeah,
like that's where he was. He had exited he'd skipped his senior year of high school and entered college a year early, and there he was, the starting quarterback for South Carolina, beating the fucking Georgia Bulldogs.
Yeah,
I remember that game. And so, actually, funny story about that. All right, so I'm a basic combat training, and there's this guy that came in from, I want to say, South Korea. He was an exchange student, and he was joining the U.S. Army to get his green card.
Oh,
and he studied at South Carolina, because I know that's where you're studying too.
Yes.
Yeah, so he studies at South Carolina, and we were talking one day, I think in the barracks, and he goes, "Hey," he's like, "So what do you like to do? What is your thing?" I'm like, "Well, I'm huge about football. I love football. College, I'm at that point, I'm scouting stuff and blah blah blah." And he's like, "Oh, that's cool." He said, "I went to a college football game once." I said, "Yeah, I could probably tell you which game it was." He's like, I said, "Well, so it was South Carolina, right? You went to South?" Yeah. He's describing it, and he said, "Yeah, there were all these people that came in. They were all screaming, 'Beat the Cox, beat the Cox.'" I'm like, He said, "We won." I'm sitting there thinking, trying to put it together. And then he mentioned something about, I said, "What was the other team wearing?" And he goes, "Red." And I was like, "Georgia." It's the Georgia Bulldogs. I remember that game. Jake Bentley came in to the rescue.
That's awesome. Yeah.
He's like, "How do you remember this?" I don't fucking know. I'm just crazy. So.
That's awesome. Yeah. Oh.
So, yeah, that's funny because it was Bentley and then it was Helinski. They both beat Georgia.
They did.
Which is crazy on the road. So, South Carolina greats. But, yeah, so Helinski will be starting tomorrow. And I don't think I think Nebraska definitely has the advantage with playmakers.
Yeah.
But they're going to have the advantage protecting their quarterback to throw the ball. And I think it's going to be kind of a ground game. It's going to be a grind game.
Fantasy-wise, I think Evan Hull, Northwestern running back and fellow Minnesotan like me, is a pretty good buy tomorrow.
Yes, he is.
He should put up some stats.
He is. He'd be great, actually. Hull, and they're going to have to lean on him a lot, and I think they're going to be able to do it. Now, Nebraska has a couple guys that I like on the defensive side in the trenches. Ochan Mathis, the transfer from TCU.
One of the best defensive guys that went in the portal last year. He gets after the quarterback well.
Oh, he's a legit NFL guy. He's legit.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be interesting to see him matched up against Skoronski tomorrow. I think that's going to be one of the bigger matchups to see who's better. I think Skoronski wins most of the time. Skoronski is very technical, I think, and he's going to do a great job. But Mathis is kind of like, if there's anybody on that Nebraska defense that can kind of help slow down the Northwestern run game, that's him.
Yeah,
it's going to have to be him. So who are you going with? Who's gonna straight first? I guess we'll go straight up, and then against the spread. Who wins this game straight up?
I really want to say Northwestern, but I think I'm going to say Nebraska wins it straight up. I did vote Northwestern in the poll, by the way.
Yeah. So, as crazy as this sounds, as crazy as this is, I just can't. I think I'm going to go straight up Northwestern.
Yeah, I have no problems with that.
I think I have to. I mean, it's just everything that you're looking at just kind of points to Northwestern. Now, the other thing is the over-under is 51.5. So, are they going to go over that, or is that going to be an under game?
That might be one where I pick the under.
Oh, you go under.
Yeah.
I'm thinking over.
Okay.
Thinking just barely over, like 20. Well, 27, 24 would be 51.
Yeah.
No, that might be an under. You might be right.
No.
Yeah, you might be right.
We'll see. Yeah, it's going to be close.
I think I'm going to go. I think I am actually going. I'm going to get off this show, and I'm going to put my straight up bet while it's still plus 335 on FanDuel. I'm going to do that. I think I'm going to go straight up Northwestern, and I feel like I'm crazy for doing it. And by the way, since we went live, the spread has dropped another half point.
Okay.
So just to kind of point that out, it was 11.5 when I showed up here and I started setting up, and now it's 11. So it opened this week at 13.5. So it's dropped now 2.5 points. So,
okay.
You got anything left for the viewers today, Who's?
I do. And that is, we did not talk about the player I am most excited to see tomorrow.
Yeah.
Florida A&M plays North Carolina tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And that means we will get to see Isaiah Land of the Rattlers play in one of the few games that will give us an indicator of how he might do against top-tier talent.
Yep.
He had a ridiculous amount of sacks last year.
Yep.
He is very well coached at FA. Willie Simmons is one of the risers in the profession. He's an offensive guy, but he's a great head coach. And Land briefly dabbled in the portal, and we thought he might go to a top-flight school. Went back to Florida A&M. I didn't think it was going to be LSU, but it would have made sense in a lot of ways if it had been. But good for him for deciding that Florida A&M was the best spot for him. Wherever anyone thinks there is the best school for them, all power to you. And he stayed there, which I think there's something to be said for that. And he has to be the odds-on favorite at this point to win the Buck Buchanan Award, which is the FCS Defensive Player of the Year. And I'm real excited to watch him tomorrow play against the Tar Heels, who recently announced that Drake May will be their starting QB over Jacoby Criswell.
Snap.
Yeah. Which I think that job was about as 50-50 as they can come.
Yeah.
Usually
it was very close. You're right.
Yeah. Usually you feel like there's one guy that probably has the edge. That one I go in and I don't know that anybody did, but Drake May is going to be the guy.
Yeah.
But I think hasn't Brown.
Sorry, no. Go ahead. Finish that thought. I'm sorry.
I'm saying I think Brown said both guys will play.
Good to
know.
But
I could be wrong about that.
So
he either said both will play or something to the effect of there will be a quick leash either way. But I would not be shocked if we see both guys play, especially if the game gets out of hand point-wise, as it should. North Carolina should take care of business and be able to play both QBs, especially in the second half.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So the big thing about tomorrow, about Isaiah Land, is what I want to find out about him is he an edge rusher or is he going to be an outside linebacker? Because that's the big question with him.
Yeah.
And it's because his frame, he's very small in terms of what you normally have an edge rusher. He's like almost 6'3", 215 pounds is what he was last listed as. And last year in, playing with Florida A&M, he had 19 sacks and 30 quarterback hurries. I mean, that is insane. So that's 50 plays right there that he impacted the backfield.
Yeah, he was
disrupted the quarterback.
He was getting roughly 4 disruptions a game, which is unheard of.
It's
It's
insane. That's
unreal.
absolute. Yeah. That is absolutely insane. So that's what I kind of want to see is he's going up against bigger offensive linemen, so we'll get a really good idea of what he's actually capable of at the next level. And so, yeah, no, thank you for mentioning. Because we've been hyping him since I first came up with the idea for the show. It was like, oh, Isaiah Land, we got him week 0. So I'm glad that you remembered that one.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm excited to see that one. I actually don't even know if I'm going to look at the TV. Oh, it's on the ACC network. So
yeah, I'll have it. I'll be able to watch it if you're not.
I might be able. We sometimes can get both of them here in South Carolina because of the Clemson location. So sometimes we can see both.
I think you're going to be able to see it because ACC network that's one of those. It's ESPN.
Good call.
ESPN.
Okay. Good call.
Yeah, so you'll be 6. I don't know what TV service you have, but if it's DirecTV, it's 612 is that channel.
Okay.
So you might have to you might have to upgrade your package. I don't remember.
Okay.
So
ACC's pretty good about being able to find live streams online though, so I'm sure I'll be able to see it.
Okay, we're not going to talk about that anymore.
Yeah.
Guys, thank you for tuning in to Gridiron Eve. We will be back next week previewing the huge week 1 that we have upcoming. Unfortunately, there'll be so much Friday night football. It's going to be distracting. We might end up live reacting to different things going on. It's going to be a lot of fun. So be sure to tune in next week. Be sure to follow. He's Mike Huesmann. I'm John Vogel. This is Gridiron Eve. We are brought to you by Draft Diamonds and the Hula Bowl. And so thank you to them for going ahead and sponsoring us. We are a sidearm of the JDV Experience. You can check out that podcast on your favorite podcast platform. It's a lot of fun. And by Football Sapient, which is one. Well, I'm not gonna. I wanted to really start to brag there, but I'm not gonna brag. I'm gonna be mild about this and say it's just it's a good company, and we like to.
It's an all-encompassing. There, you should follow the Sapient networks on Twitter. There's basically one for any niche of football you may enjoy following and getting news on. So it's they cover a lot of ground and different topics that may be of interest to you.
So thank you again for tuning in, and be sure to catch us next week, and we'll be announcing our guests throughout the week. Thank you, guys. Shout out. God bless. This is Gridiron Eve.